Imagine this: a 12-year-old sitting in class, arms crossed, eyes rolling, waiting for the bell to rescue them from yet another boring lecture. The teacher stands at the front, passionately explaining the lesson, but the student, there, disengaged, distracted, and completely uninterested. What went wrong? Here's a shocking truth. Over 80% of Gen Alpha students feel disconnected from their teachers. And in a world where technology offers more engaging alternatives, classrooms are struggling to compete. Why? And more importantly, what can we do about it? In this groundbreaking video, we'll uncover the hard truths behind the disconnect between Gen Alpha and traditional education. But more importantly, we'll dive into 9 powerful lessons that will change how we understand the classroom of the future. Stick around because by the end of this video, you'll see exactly what's wrong and how to fix it. Lesson 1. The digital versus traditional clash. Let's start with the elephant in the room. Gen Alpha was born into the digital age. Unlike millennials or Gen Z, who adapted to technology, Gen Alpha never knew a world without it. Their first teacher wasn't a school instructor, it was YouTube, TikTok, and interactive apps that spoke their language. Now, picture this: a child who's been watching fast-paced, visually engaging, choice-driven content their whole life walks into a traditional classroom. What happens? They encounter slow, linear lectures, minimal engagement, a lack of interactive choice. It's like switching from a high-speed roller coaster to a slow-moving train. No wonder their attention drifts. Studies show that Gen Alpha's attention span averages just 8 seconds, meaning if something doesn't grab their interest instantly, they check out. This isn't a discipline issue, it's an evolution of learning preferences. So the real question is, how do we bridge the gap? First, let's look at how Gen Alpha absorbs information. They don't just watch, they interact. Traditional lectures, they feel like a monologue in a world of conversations. The solution? Make learning immersive. For example, imagine teaching history through VR experiences where students visit ancient Rome instead of reading about it. Or using AI-driven apps that adjust to individual learning speeds. Because here's the truth: if education doesn't evolve, students will seek knowledge elsewhere. And they already are. Lesson 2. The motivation crisis. Ask any teacher today, and they'll tell you, kids don't care about school anymore. But is that really true? Or is it that schools haven't adapted to what truly motivates Gen Alpha? Let's look at the data. 92% of Gen Alpha students say they would rather learn through games. 78% believe school is not relevant to their future. That second statistic is key. Not relevant. Think about if this is the most entrepreneurial, self-taught generation we've ever seen. They're making money through YouTube, gaming, and coding before they even hit high school. So when a teacher stands up and says, "You need to learn this because it's important," without explaining how it's a lost cause to keep them engaged, we need to connect school to real-world impact. What if instead of traditional assignments, students could create YouTube videos on historical events instead of writing reports? Use Minecraft to build ancient civilizations rather than sketching them. Learn math through stock market simulations instead of repetitive worksheets. Because here's the key: Gen Alpha doesn't lack motivation. They lack meaning in what they're taught. If we connect their interests with the curriculum, engagement skyrockets. Lesson 3. The power of personalized learning. Raise your hand if you ever sat through a class bored out of your mind because the topic didn't challenge your left behind because it moved too fast. Gen Alpha isn't just facing that reality, they're rejecting it. Unlike previous generations, they're accustomed to personalized content. Every TikTok algorithm, every video game challenge, every YouTube recommendation, it's all tailored to them, and then they enter school, where every student gets the same lesson at the same pace. In the same format, it's like expecting someone who's used to Spotify's curated playlists to go back to listening to cassette tapes. But what if school worked differently? What if instead of a one-size-fits-all approach, students learned at their own pace using AI-driven tutors that adapted to their progress? Imagine a classroom where students move to the next lesson only when they've mastered the previous one. Subjects are presented in different formats based on each student's learning style. Gamified. Challenges replace passive memorize via TIO. It's not futuristic, it's already happening. Schools experimenting with adaptive learning software have seen engagement levels skyrocket. So the real question is, why aren't we making this the standard? Lesson 4. Why Gen Alpha craves emotional intelligence in their teachers. Gen Alpha isn't just looking for teachers who know their stuff. They want teachers who understand them as people. Unlike past generations, where strict authority was respected, Gen Alpha thrives in environments where they feel heard, valued, and emotionally supported. They don't respond well to "because I said so" leadership. Instead, they engage with teachers who build genuine relationships with them. Research shows that classrooms where teachers practice emotional intelligence, actively listening, showing empathy, and adapting to student emotions see higher engagement levels. Better academic performance, lower dropout rates. Teachers who make learning personal by relating lessons to students' lives, being approachable, and creating a safe space for discussion see a dramatic difference in engagement. But here's the challenge. Most schools don't prioritize emotional intelligence training for teachers. And that needs to change. Lesson 5. The rise of AI in education. What if your child's next favorite teacher wasn't human? AI-powered tutors are already changing the way students learn. From chatbots that provide instant homework help to AI-driven platforms that create customized study plans. The role of educators is shifting. But here's the controversial question. Could AI eventually replace teachers? The short answer? At least not entirely. But the classrooms that integrate AI for personalized learning, instant feedback, and adaptive lesson plans will leave traditional schools in the dust. And that's where the future is heading. Want to know how AI will revolutionize education? Stay tuned for the next part of this video. Lesson 6. The AI revolution in education. Why teachers must adapt or get left behind. Imagine walking into a classroom where an AI assistant knows exactly what you struggle with, tailors lessons to your pace, and even predicts when you're about to lose focus. Sounds like science fiction. It's not, it's the reality Gen Alpha is stepping into. And here's the kicker. Many teachers are completely unprepared for this shift. Artificial intelligence isn't just changing education. It's redefining it. Personalized learning, AI-driven tutors, and adaptive assessments mean students no longer have to fit into a rigid one-size-fits-all system. Instead, education adapts to them. But here's the problem. Most traditional teachers are resisting this change, fearing that AI will replace them. The truth: AI won't take teachers' jobs, but teachers who use AI will replace those who don't. Take AI tutors, for example. Platforms like ChatGPT and Khan Academy's AI tutor can provide instant ATT 24/7's feedback, breaking down complex topics in ways each student understands. Compare that to a traditional classroom, where one teacher, it's responsible for 30+ students. There's no competition. So, what does this mean for teachers? They need to shift from being information providers to being guides and mentors. Emotional intelligence, adaptability, and creativity will be the most valuable skills moving forward. Schools that fail to integrate AI into the curriculum, they'll become obsolete faster than a VHS tape in a streaming era. Lesson 7. Why schools are teaching the wrong skills. And what needs to change now? Raise your hand if you remember using the quadratic formula in real life. No, thought so. The hard truth. Schools are still teaching skills that were designed for the industrial age. Memorization, standardized tests, and rigid curriculums are relics of a past era. Meanwhile, Gen Alpha is growing up in a world where soft skills, critical thinking, emotional intelligence, adaptability are the real currency of success. Let's take coding, for example. A decade ago, coding was considered a specialized skill. Today, AI can generate code in seconds. So does that mean coding is useless? No, it means the focus should shift to problem solving, logic, and creativity. The same goes for communication and collaboration skills that AI can't replicate but are essential for success in a tech-driven world. Forward thinking. Schools are already catching on. Finland, for instance, focuses on interdisciplinary learning rather than rigid subjects. Singapore prioritizes problem-solving and creativity over rote memorization. But many schools in other countries are stuck in the past, leaving students unprepared for the real world. If schools don't pivot now, they risk producing a generation of students who are academically qualified but functionally unprepared. For life, lesson 8. The future of education, hybrid learning, and the rise of self-education. What if I told you that the future of education isn't in classrooms, but in living rooms, coffee shops, and virtual reality? Hybrid learning where online and in-person education blend seamlessly isn't just a trend. It's the new standard. Gen Alpha already consumes information differently. They're watching YouTube tutorials, taking online courses, and learning through interactive apps often more efficiently than traditional schooling allows. So why are schools still stuck in the 20th century? Look at the rise of self-education platforms like Masterclass, Coursera, and Udemy. People are learning skills in months that once took years in formal education. And the best part? They can do it at their own pace. Traditional schools need to take notes literally in a hybrid model. Students have the freedom to learn core subjects online while using classroom time for discussions, debates, and collaborative problem solving. This shift would keep learning engaging, relevant, and adaptably what Gen Alpha craves. The question isn't, will schools adopt hybrid learning? It's how long can they survive without it? Lesson 9. The power shift. Why Gen Alpha wants a say in their own education. Here's a radical thought. What if students had more control over what they learned? Right now, education is mostly dictated by policymakers, many of whom have never set foot in a modern classroom. Meanwhile, students, those directly impacted, have little to no say in how they're taught. But Gen Alpha isn't the kind to stay silent. They want personalized learning. They want relevant real-world skills. And most importantly, they want education that respects their individuality. Some forward-thinking schools are experimenting with student-led learning models, where students co-create their curriculum based on their interests and career goals. Think about it when students have agency. They become active participants instead of passive recipients. Imagine a student passionate about game design being allowed to integrate coding, storytelling, and business skills into their curriculum. That's education that actually prepares them for the future. So, will schools give Gen Alpha the autonomy they crave? Or will they continue forcing outdated models until students opt out altogether, to be continued? Want to know how AI will revolutionize education even further? Stay tuned for the next part of this series.